All right, picking up where we left off on page 264, we're talking about outsourcing fees and how they can collect money from you. And basically three ways, the fixed fee, pay per user or per machine, or some sort of a meter, packets being sent or records being stored, something of that nature. So talking about outsourcing in a little bit more details on page 265, they talk about how you have some mission critical things that maybe you want a little bit more control over rather than having some outsider do it. And a lot of companies are a little nervous about going completely out of country. You may have heard of all the stories about everyone going offshore for tech support. And once again, you might immediately say, aha! The reason why they went offshore was because it's cheaper labor. Well, okay, I'll admit, yes, it is cheaper labor. The number one reason they probably went offshore for tech support was cost. But on the other hand, those jobs aren't very glamorous. People don't like them, and you can go offshore and more than likely end up with a better, more stable set of employees. Because most people in the U.S. wouldn't put up with that kind of abuse and would quit after a few months. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. The bottom line is, yes, selling things offshore is complex. I would be nervous. Political instability, all sorts of strange things could happen that really could mess things up. But let's talk in general terms about outsourcing, and let's talk about a completely another reason that's not in the book. Let's say, for example, that I have a tire store and I sell tires, and I kind of outsourced my entire software package that I use to operate my tire store to Joe's Friendly App Development. So I outsourced it, and Joe's Friendly App Development produced me something that was fantastic. But I kind of realized as I'm looking at it that, man, they put this thing together in a hurry. I mean, it only took them a couple of weeks, and they have everything put together. That's amazing. And then you realize all I got was my competitors. Some other tire shop had hired them to do similar work, and all they did was go through and make some changes. Now, think about this. We have two tire shops, my tire shop and my competitor's tire shop across town, and we're both using the exact same software. The exact same software that tells me what my reorder points are. The exact same software that helps me do customer relations management and how to determine when I should put things on sale. I'm stuck now. I'm wedded to my competitor. Wow. Because I really don't have an opportunity to differentiate myself. If we're using the exact same software and exact same analytics, then I'm in no better shape off than my competitor. I can't come up with a new strategy for sales that he doesn't already have. So anyway, commonality is sometimes an issue when you go outsource. Clearly, if you developed it yourself, well then, you would never come up with something that your competitor was going to end up using. Okay. So on 266, they talk about, okay, let's assume that we're going to do this in-house. So, the most important consideration on whether or not you want to do in-house options is the total cost of ownership, this TCO, total cost of ownership. Because it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you to put it together. It's going to cost you to maintain it. It's going to cost you to train it. And, you might have very good developers, excellent developers that can knock something out in a hurry, but they can't write a user's manual to save their life. So, yeah, you have to come up with the entire package. What's the training going to cost? All the rest of the stuff. So there's a little cool diagram here on page 266 where they talk about, here's where we are. Remember when we were doing the planning and analysis, we're in the analysis phase. And so you basically have a make or purchase, make or buy decision here. I could make it myself and go completely in-house. I could purchase something and I'm done. And then there's this third option. And third option is, I go to a company and say, I really like your, inventory system, but would you be willing to work with us on making some tweaks to it to meet our business needs? And they might say, well, sure. What do you have in mind? And they'll sit down with you, and so you end up with a customized piece of software that not necessarily you would develop, but you would go to the vendor and say, I like this product, but can you tweak it a little bit? So those are some excellent ways of kind of coming up with, should I do a make or buy? So make or buys are all about, how do I get to the end in a quick manner? How do I get there in a cheap manner? Okay, this next little diagram, they talk about kind of some rationale between the two. In-house development is almost always going to meet your unique requirements. I mean, if you have a business process that's really strange, the likelihood of you finding some commercial software that exactly matches your business practices is pretty doggone low. And of course, if you do it, you can kind of control the chaos level. There's going to be chaos when you install a new system, and you can kind of sort of control that if you're doing it in-house. And what your existing technologies are, what your existing systems are. You know all that stuff. Where a vendor, of course, would have no idea how much memory you have installed on your machines, for example. And so therefore they might say, well, let's install this CAD software as part of our package. And you go, wow, I don't have graphic cards that can handle that. Those kind of scenarios. So yes, you're more in control, but on the other hand, it's going to take a long time to build one of these suckers, and if I just buy it, man, I'm going to have it shipped and be here like tomorrow. And more than likely, the total cost, more than likely, is going to be lower, because they're taking their development and their training and all the rest of the thing, and they're spreading that cost through all their customers, so you don't have to pay for 100% of the development. You don't have to pay for 100% of the training. But on the in-house, you do. You do have to pay 100% of the training and 100% of the development costs. So you can't amortize it by spreading it out among other customers. Okay, so let's kind of go through the list. Satisfies unique requirements, minimizes the change, meets constraints. Internal resources and capabilities are kind of sort of well known and understood. Lower cost software packages, almost less than doing it in-house. Requires very little time to put together, unless of course you're going with that custom option. And proven reliability. Perhaps they have benchmarks that they can prove things are going to work the way they expect. It doesn't really take much development, technical skills to be able to do this. You flip through the catalog, you say, I'll take one of those. And of course, you can pretty much be assured that you're not going to be obsolete. Hopefully, your company's not going to go out of business. And so, if it's a technology issue, they're going to, that comes up, they'll come up with it at the same time. I will tell you that something as simple as the Blackboard system that we're currently using, Blackboard is not extraordinarily quick. For example, they still don't support the Internet 10 that comes with Windows 8. So Windows 8's been out for 6 months, and they still haven't got around to coming up with compatibility on their webpage to support this new technology. So you should look into the track record of the company on how frequently they update and how frequently they engage in new technologies. Okay. So then, of course, you have, you could get input from other companies on how well they did. How fast were they? How cheap were they? What did their trainers do? That kind of thing. You could come up with some cool stuff. Okay, the third option, talking about customization on page 270, where you buy a basic package, and you say, I'll take your basic package and I'll go in and create an add-on to it. That used to be relatively common. And it still kind of is the way you could do databases. You could buy an entire database and then just customize the front end. That works very well. On the other hand, the more than likely way you would do it is you would go to the vendor and say, I like your product, but can you work with me on making some changes? That would be the most likely of the scenarios. And of course, how much you pay for that, wow, don't know. It's probably going to be expensive. Okay, so on the bottom of page 271, they talk about the role of the system analyst one more time. And let me just kind of go through this because it's kind of goofy. It talks about, the decision to develop software in-house requires more participation. Yeah, your system analyst is going to be running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And the evaluation and selection of alternatives is not a simple process. It's going to take an awful lot of energy to make that happen. And you often work as an evaluator on a selection team. So you're going to be part of a team kind of helping out. So the whole idea is that these types of roles of system analysts have kind of changed over time and gotten a little bit more complex. So next they talk about the cost-benefit analysis. Some companies provide these cool little tools where you can come up with total cost of ownership and ROI calculators. You can go to the web, you can just type in a search about ROI calculator or TCO calculator, and they're pretty good. You type in a bunch of stuff, hit the button, even if you don't understand any of the financial information, it'll pop up a pretty cool analysis of the scenario and tell you what the payback is or return on investment, those kind of things. So payback analysis, I'm not going to get into accounting, but payback analysis basically is, how long does it take to get recoup my cost, and it could use, present value of money or, lots of other ways. Return on investment is that percentage, that rate at which I can achieve that. Net present value, you guys can read this stuff. This is not a course in finance. But let's go through this little checklist. I do like the checklist on page 274 and following on 275. So let me just go through the checklist. It talks about, each department development strategy is being considered. Yep. Identify the costs and benefits for each alternative. That makes sense. Calculate the future growth and need for scalability. Yeah, that makes sense. Include the support costs for hardware and software. Analyze various software licensing options, because a lot of companies have options, including fixed fees, formulas, those kind of things. Apply the financial analysis tools like we just talked about, TCO or ROI, and study the results and prepare a report for management. So that's your cost-benefit checklist. Okay, on page 275 they talk about, okay, let's go through the acquisition process, and we're going to go through this relatively rapidly. This covers several pages and we'll skip through it rather quickly. Okay, step one in the process is to evaluate your system requirements. Now, we've talked about this a gazillion times, so there's nothing new. What are the key features, whether or not I want it web-based or I want it on the LAN, estimate the volume and future growth, specify what my hardware and software, whatever my constraints are that I have. Perhaps I don't have a personnel constraint. And then you prepare a request for a proposal or request for quotation for people to come back to you. Okay, step two on page 278, where you identify the potential vendors, and hopefully they've kind of come back to you. And you can go to the internet and find tons and tons of examples, or you can just go to the internet and find these companies that do this kind of stuff for a living. You could hire a consulting firm that kind of helps you manage the bidding process. It is complex, and to tell you the truth, it takes an awful lot of time and energy, and I would gladly hire somebody to help me out as long as I trusted they were being on my side rather than on the side of some vendor. So, once again, this is at the end of the 15-minute mark. We'll pick this up again in just a few.